Okay, it's that time again. It's Monday. It's the Data Value Show day. We've got Alex Munn today to talk about from hype to trust, getting LLMs enterprise ready. We'd already started the discussion ahead in the back room before we started, so I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation. So, without further ado, Alex, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, even though we just covered that just before anyway. So I'm giving you the same answer.
Yes, we did.
I'm still good. But... very polite to you anyway. So Alex, for the audience, for anyone out there that wants to know a bit about yourself, do you want to introduce yourself and provide some background?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Alex Munn. So I'm the co-founder and CTO of a small data-focused AI startup called Refined Perception. There we're trying to help improve the accuracy and get trustworthy responses out of AI systems, because when it started and everyone get excited, it was very obvious which way the wind was going to blow on this. As background, I've been in technology for around 20 years, mainly working in finance, a lot of things in hedge funds and investment banks. Ideally trying to be a developer, but being pulled into management more often than generally I'd like. But now get back to actually being hands-on keyboard, real work. So this is good fun. And yeah, very interested now more in the data space and the exciting pieces in this community.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you. And we were just talking before, we've had loads of conversations, but they've normally been at events, and yeah, and maybe not as formal as today's one's going to be as well. And we've already started formal, so we'll carry on. I mean,
I'll try and keep the brow high.
Yeah, you'll do well. You'll do well. We're just talking about this before, and based on some experience I've gained recently of playing around with this stuff, and it's the right tool for the right job. Horses for courses, and that one category of the AI is going to solve all your problems, and it's a one size fits all. It's not. Well, we know that's not reality. So, yeah, share a little bit more, because obviously I've got some views on this as well. But I'd like to see. I'd like to hear your view of when it's good, or when it's not, when it's the right tool, or when it's not the right tool or right approach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Totally agree with that. I've just been sort of putting together a presentation which meant to be at sort of board level, where it will be describing what is AI, what do we mean by AI? And generally these days people are meaning generative AI, thinking things like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. But if we think back historically, it'd pull into more traditional sort of ML type approaches and methods. What it's not, I actually have a column there. What it's not is magic. It's not inherently trustworthy. It does not inherently add more value than traditional approaches. And what we don't want was sort of the meme of Trump and Powell, where we've got Trump as the CEO going, we've got 1,000 AI agents running in prod, the CTO looking very confused. So what the value you can get from AI generally, when we're talking about generative, is a good layer on top. I often think about it as a sort of mortar or glue between components. It adds a bit of a human element. It adds some adjustability and give into an otherwise structured system. What it is not is this wizard which automatically comes up with any answer and is right.
Yes.
I mean, where do you think this is?
Well, I've been. If anyone's noticed, I haven't been as busy on LinkedIn recently. There's two reasons for that. One, I'm incredibly busy with work, and the other one is any gaps I've got, I'm arguing with ChatGPT about stuff, or Cursor nowadays as well. So,
are you winning?
Yeah, I am. But this really goes back down to the point that we're making, is the fact that the hype versus reality, and
yeah.
The doom and gloom of they're going to take our jobs. It's all going to be you realise that it's really just making you more efficient, and it's not always right. And the other thing is, you need logical thinking that it isn't able to do. It will answer individual questions based on some context, and this comes back down the but it won't give it the whole, unless you've done a very good upfront design of what you want to do. So I'll give an example of that. You're doing some you're vibing, you built something, then you change the logic somewhere else. Or it'll just create a new function that may be in the same
Mm.
logic that it's using for that one, and then keep the old logic there as well, which is you actually want that to be reused, but it hasn't done that because it may break something. So it then goes and duplicates code in there that if you give it instructions and maybe a good architect design is, I want a sequence capability that has this. I might use that in a few places, but it's always going to be the same one. When you're
Yes.
vibing, just doing things iteratively, you lose that architecture sort of thing, what you're trying to achieve. And I think what I found is I've been an architect for well, yeah. Last time I was a proper developer, a long. I had really long hair then. Put it that way. That's it was. In fact, I even showed you
Can
the
we get
picture.
pictures?
So, so it was a long time ago. But I've been an architect for 20 odd years, but an architect that was able to talk and still able to talk that developer language and still do some hands-on stuff. But mainly that business whisperer, sitting in between the two. But what I've realised I've done, and this is the problem now, is I have no blocker now. If I have an idea, I've got no one stopping me now. Before I go, let me go speak to someone and I'll get that person's going to write a bit of Python and see if that'll do that. I can write myself now, done, tested. But I know what to ask. I know it. I know where the treasure is. Now the map to get there is very, very easy. I mean, it needs to be productionized, but you ask it in the right way, you're much more likely to get something that is reusable. But consistency, that's a different matter. I mean, that's using AI.
Depends on what's
Yeah.
Yeah, but on that slightly different topic, and slightly outside the data space, but that also depends on the scale of the problem you're solving. And I think there's a bit of you're short-circuiting the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule here, where you've got an illusion that you've done 80% of the work really quickly, and so it's done. And then there's a big gulf into getting that out and running repeatedly. Absolutely fantastic for small tools, and it's great to vibe something up. I think there is a little bit of an illusion of productivity and flow, because it allows you to maintain the flow state. But when you can sometimes step back and look at it, how much have I actually done versus if I'd actually read the whole instructions and documentation for something.
Or had an upfront design. So
Yes.
having that upfront design that's been and define. It's good old days of requirements. Right, just sitting there, just think you could save so much time with arguing with ChatGPT or it going off on it if you just sit down before and just, in fact, do it yourself. Don't bother asking it first of all, because you want to use your ideas on this stuff, because otherwise it will guide you down a path that you may go down a rabbit hole. But it sent me down that many times. Start with good old-fashioned requirements, what you want to achieve, how you would architecturally design that with functional components, what they're doing. Start there and iterate from that. You'll do much better than just saying, "No, I want to go and create this API to go and do this." Oh, now I've got the API. I want to go and get this by this get command, and then okay, and then you go that way around. Yeah, you'll get to where you want. But then if you try and then go and factor that into a production ready, or try and actually then try and enhance it in ways it wasn't expecting, you're going to be, I've been experience, you'll be there with a 1,400 lines of Java code or Python code that, it doesn't actually need to be like that now.
Yeah. Well, I often find that when I'm trying to do the coding via an agent, so it really reminds me of writing really well structured Jira tickets. I spend a lot of time thinking, how do I do this? How do I put this? What are the stages I want to break this down for the AI? And so I've just moved my development into effectively Jira, or now Cursor, or Client I'm using a lot.
Yeah, and I think you have to write it in a way you're writing it for a junior developer.
Yeah.
a lazy junior developer.
I wouldn't say they're always lazy. They sometimes can be quite officious and wanting to make sure it's done very well. But yeah, in my mind, I generally think of AI as in, if you're trying to instruct a grad who's maybe 3 months out of uni, really clever, knows a fair amount, but doesn't have the domain specific knowledge to do the thing that you're trying to do, and you have to feed that and provide the same level of oversight.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and I think at one point though, now it's a grad out of 3 months, right? 2 years time. Then after that, it'll be okay. What am I doing wrong? It's like, it's now teaching you. But I think it's just a repeater at the moment. The LLMs out there just repeating stuff and knowledge already out there, and not always accurately. Which that's probably another topic to come on. There is accuracy and predictability of the behavior that you're expecting from an LLM over and what associated business processes are you happy to associate or be driven off that level of accuracy?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a very good point. And I think one of the things that we always need to remember is when we're talking about LLMs and we always talk about generative AI, the gen does mean it makes stuff up. That's literally the sort of the definition of it. And I think people do forget they are. I mean, we like to play around with the idea that they're intelligent, and I do kind of get a sense that humans often model a level of LLM type behavior in their own thought process. So when we're constructing, when I'm constructing this sentence in my head, I know what statistically the next word I should be saying is to go and construct a coherent sentence, mostly coherent most of the time. We'll see. But I think we can often get to the idea that with an LLM, that it is fundamentally just trying to predict what is the right answer. It doesn't know the right answer. It doesn't think, it's not able to rationalize. And I think one of the approaches that I also would like to take is call it intellectual Taylorism. So if we look back into the rise of the Industrial Revolution and production and the production line, Frederick Taylor came along and went, these factories, they're all over the place and we can't make them efficient. And so he came up with a series of rules, the idea of how you break down individual components and the parts in the production line to literally make a factory work. And I think we need to do the same thing with intellectual thought processes, that we can't just describe the overall problem and say to an LLM, go away and fix it. Instead, we have to break down the individual parts, the parts of cognition, the bits we need to have thought of, and then review which are the things that we need a human in the middle and which are the bits we can offload to LLMs. And if we offload to LLMs, similar to a construction line, you need to give it every piece of information that it needs to be able to action that. And you also want to constrain the output. You don't want to just let it come back with anything. You need to make very clear instructions about this is what I need to get out of you.
So I just writing it. There's two sort of use cases for LLMs, and there's probably many. So, but I just captured these. One is using it to help you generate the code that you can put in production, and that code has built-in logic that's been tested via a standard SDLC process. So it's the world we know now, but accelerated and improved with that support. Then there's the other route where, and in some cases, some things that should have been written in code that has that logical thing baked into it and tested are going down the route of, oh, I'm going to do prompt engineering with access to some information I've given it to and some instructions, and I'm going to get it to do the thing that I used to have programmatically performed and expect the same results or better results. I think that's the issue we got at this moment. There's no clear definition of, like, everyone wants to go, we've deployed it, we've got these agents doing this, the CIO on the golf course going, oh, how many agents do you have running in production now? And I've got 15 now. Oh, damn, I'd have to go back and get my development team to do that, because next time I'm playing a round of golf, I can't be beat by that CIO. And they have no understanding of what these agents are even doing, but it's a board level sort of statement can be made, a shareholder thing can be made, it's some big public news, you can have effect on your share price. Now, but will it later? And so I think that's the biggest risk out there, is people using it for the wrong thing.
100% agree. And so one general, and you sort of saying there about using it to make decisions, one of the sort of main principles that we sort of found is effective is don't get the AI to ever touch your data. It can see the data and it can describe transformations to your data and methods it might want to use, but you never get it to return the actual data itself. So it can sort of tell you, like, want a primary key and you want to do this to it or that to it, but you can never say, add this number to this number. And I know addition, they're okay at addition. When they first came out, they weren't, but it just allows you to, one, check that it's actually valid, because if you're always referencing back to a primary data source, the primary key is there or not. You can add some other validation rules, whether that's an appropriate thing for the LM to do. And then you can be sure that the result you get back has gone through one of the more deterministic classical computing methods that we can all trust.
Yeah. And there's, and I was having this conversation with Libra over the weekend, actually. And from the old world of data and how we've always thought before, everything's always in hierarchies of decisions and like a decision tree where you're going around, which is all very easy to logically, you may have a multi-party hierarchy with different levels. That was part of the complexity that you had to have and understand from a data model and a knowledge perspective. What's happened now is the fact that, okay, and humans easy, we can understand that. Okay, look, it's quite nice path, Now you imagine with knowledge graphs, the ontologies, Gen AI, vector databases, all of that, the path that it goes down to go and get this information is only as accurate, or always, sorry, it'll only take the most predictable path based on the context you provide it and the rules you provide it.
Yeah.
And because that's the only thing you've got control of, you haven't got control of anything else, because it's always learning and finding new paths for it to go down, which may be weighted at this time. You'll go down this route because there's been more activity on that, but that's not the route you're expecting. And it's and this is why I call it context. Everyone's talking semantic 2.0 and we're all talking about context. And I think that, and anyone that listens to the show, they'll hear me banging on about it all the time. Not in my post readings, I haven't had time to do them, but it's how you manage all of that context. And if you're going to be using that context for Gen AI, it's how you make sure that you need to be able to update that context and that knowledge instructions, to keep it consistent of its answers and prevent, potential bad scenarios happening where it could go down a totally different path that you weren't expecting. So being able to be able to capture like these things nearly in near real time to correct when these things go, hold on, we've had a deviation on the results now by X amount. That's not good. Right. Quickly go and do a question or prompt to ask, why have you started going the route? Oh, you need to put this instruction in to stop it. Okay, right. Quickly get that in there now.
But the problem you end up in that case of when you're trying to do prompt engineering and adding multiple different pieces in, and you're trying to stabilize a prompt which is flipping, is probably a good indication that you're overloading that particular instruction, because then it can't deterministically come up with a very high probability of a particular outcome given a particular set of inputs. And so what you probably want to do there is, coming back to like this intellectual taylorism thought, break down your workflow into smaller chunks in order to say, well, this piece will do this thing. And the other thing, you can have consensus building. I'm quite a fan of ask the same question slightly different ways, but in multiple times, and produce a simple, like one output from it based off what the biggest consensus is. And you can do that through either, if you can empirically choose what is the output, great. If not, you can use another LLM to go and reduce that down. But if you think about that sort of workflow, you get a number of LLMs to distill it down, and then one, which context is the output of these others, and you tell it, make a decision. And then it's able to very guardrailed into producing one answer, which you can trust-ish, rather than one. You don't want to keep adding to the prompt. If you keep adding to the prompt, you're adding complexity.
So even if it's I've been having like a rules engine or thing I put in there that the prompt refers to the rules engine, and maybe I've done something. The rules are in a hierarchy of things that are in preference. So I was trying to go back and update that rule statement each time, so I didn't have to change the instructions, because you lose each time you change the instructions. We should probably have an offline. We can do some development tips, and I'll show you mine. You can show me
Do a
yours.
live coding demo, mate.
There's a limit to my I wasn't that prepared for this, let alone trying to do a live demo on it as well. We only just got the banner 2 minutes before, so so what's we're talking about the hype. So how do we prevent how do we prevent the hype and educate the people that a reality check, and to get to get that honest view of how we're going to get value from AI?
It's an interesting problem, and you've actually hit a problem there when you're saying, well, if the CEO and the CFO is on the golf course with the investors, there is a bit of truth, right? That if you're trying to deliver shareholder value denoted by share price, then maybe riding the hype train isn't the worst idea in the world because you're able to demonstrate that. So there is a sort of bizarre social second order effect we get.
So I think and you're right, and it's that you have to keep the stakeholders happy and you have to take them on the journey. But I think it's really understanding when you just throw money away and just doing something stupid. So you can still achieve the same result by going, okay, we need to get, if you want a number, so how many AI agents? Great. I've got these 5 that do some marketing analysis. I've got these couple that just go and do some sales automation. I've got these, great. All right, low risk, simple, bite-sized chunks. Not going to risk your business going under. Not going to risk your business reputation. And it's a learning exercise that you can take people on the journey, and you still can go and say you're using these things. I think trying to rush and put these things on your existing large-scale, data platforms without actually making sure the quality's there, making sure the governance are there, making sure the guardrails are there, and just thinking, stick AI on top of it. Now we've got some new product lines that we can go and sell or upsell our existing clients with these new capabilities. It's not going to happen because it'll all end in tears, believe me.
Yeah. Well, that's what you see a lot of things which are basic summarization or a chatbot, because that's really what LLMs are really good at, because they are dealing with human text in a low risk environment that they can make a mistake and everyone can laugh that it's produced a summary in a particular way, or you get maybe a bit frustrated when the chatbot doesn't quite figure it out, but it's not a big high risk. And you've actually got a real good point there about people aren't very comfortable in putting these in the front and center workflows because they're not deterministic and you can't build the trust in them, not like you can with individuals in the same way, because, well, when you're building a company, you go through effectively the whole recruitment and performance management process is an exercise in building trust and understanding where you can deploy and get predictable results. And I think some of this is now trying to merge a little bit of engineering, social engineering with prompt engineering and general oversight and trust approaches to go and able to enable you to put them into workflows. But then you start to wonder, what is the value add? Because sure, I can add Gen AI into this stuff, but is it actually better than a traditional automation approach? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I've confined that on a project, you can get 95% of the way plus with just traditional engineering approaches. There is some value, definitely, and some magic of you're unable to get without Gen AI. There are some intuitive leaps that it will make that you wouldn't be able to get without a normal approach, where you'd usually traditionally shove that back to a user. But that then allows you to make more complex systems which can scale more. But you just have to be very careful about where in your system AI is trying to add that value in. Like I said, don't ever let it touch the numbers.
Yeah, very true. So we're talking about the route to production, and you've got more experience on delivering AI applications for in what you're doing at the moment. I'm playing around internally for some stuff, and luckily I've hired someone that's a specialist in this area that starts soon anyway. So he'll be on the show soon. But so then there'll be some real internal knowledge. But I'd like to understand what's your route to live, and how would you advise someone to say, okay, right, I've taken it from development, I've taken it to route to, well, first of all, I've identified a use case. I've got it into development. I'm now taking it through to production. What would that process look like to minimize minimize the risk of it going bad?
Well, I would say if you're going to design any system, there's always a link between where the system interacts with when humans interact with it. There's no difference then. You just need to apply your standard SDLC process with assume when you're delivering a product, there's always going to be training and oversight. You just have to then apply that with the assumption that if you were going to give a task to AI, how would you do that if you would, like, as we talked about before, if you're going to give this to an intern or a grad, what would you build into this process to allow that you had the oversight of that? So, but that's a bit flippant. On a more technical or real basis, logging, very useful. So quite a fan. There's a few different tools for this. I've used PromptLayer before, and I'm using one at the moment called LangFuse. Very happy with that, where it allows you to give a real understanding about what are the prompts going in and out, what are the responses, and allow you to play around with it. And so it gives you a good oversight about what the models are going and doing. Establish a testing framework, and it's actually quite interesting that you end up having to have your unit test. You don't want to be hitting any of the AI endpoints. Generally, well, one, for costs, and two, for reproducibility. And so you need to have a layer where when you're making calls, you've abstracted this out, so you have a predictable flow for the main business logic for your application, then separately this sort of black box end-to-end test rig for your prompts, so you can try and track if any model changes happen. And if you're using public endpoints, that can just happen and you're not notified about that, and suddenly your application starts doing things very differently. You may then, of course, want to go for things like pinning. So you could pin to a particular model. That has its own downsides, very similar to how if you pin any libraries, that it just goes out of date, it becomes more difficult to manage and may not be supported, because remember, these things take a lot of space. And at some point, another cloud provider is going to decide that this model 3 years old is not worth keeping on its SSD somewhere. Yeah, that's sort of the general high level, and also being able to describe exactly what your AI is doing. The other thing I've found useful, and this coming back to the, I'm going to bang this drum another time, why not? Don't let it touch the data. If you get it to tell you how to make the changes to the data, you can then establish like a live lineage. So similar to how, we're doing DBT modeling, that we're able to establish like column level lineage. But if you're trying to do with live data, you're able to say, I got this input, I did this to it, I merged it with this thing, and I did this. And then you can able to produce a trace back through about what it did. Now, it might not be able to tell you why it did it, and that is always something of a little bit of a mystery, but at least you can able to see the hoops that it jumps through.
So when you say not touch data, it's not actually make changes to the data without it being logged or like changed, or like an update new record of the changes made or something like that.
Yeah, so using the, everyone likes an agent these days, and agent comes down to using tools. So you make the AI use tools to go and make any access data or change data, and that would allow you to log every tool which is used and what it did. And so then you can produce this trace live lineage of, or I refer to it generally as provenance, about where did your data come from and what happened.
I love that. Yes, I use that term as well. It's like your art. You always want to make sure your art's comes from the correct place as well. That's why I always know mine's a real Da Vinci, because I know the provenance of it.
Because you stole it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what was great insight there, and I think you mentioned just before is like it's an SDLC process, and
yes,
the things that I was just mapping it to like equivalent. So you need to have AI ops now, which was the same as your data ops. Now it's now monitoring these things in line. You're going to have some sort of FinOps capability for this as well. So you're extending that to do your cost to make sure that you're doing testing in the right place, but you're getting the best bang for your buck for your testing. Your testing's not costing you a fortune and not getting no value. Test rig for prompts. We've got a client, we're doing a migration over to building a reconciliation engine, or using one, adapting one we've got, and it's a standard thing you should be put in place of doing these things. So you should really have that test. But I think it's that new spin of a test rig for prompts. So be able to have a backlog of predicted results or that you've got in the past from historical prompts, so you can see that I'm still getting what I was getting before, plus the new changes haven't done anything is useful. I think in good old testing as well, automating that. But pinning, that was like that made me laugh. It's like the good old days of in your Oracle when you used to give it a hint. Look, I know you're going to take this optimized plan there, but look, it's wrong. All right, so I know it's wrong because you haven't updated your stats yet, and just do this, and then you'll get caught out when you do an upgrade, and now the optimized works out differently. So
thanks for the PTSD's flashback, dude.
Yeah, we've all been there, haven't we? But yeah, so it's pinning, and I think having pinning as part of maybe your test rig. Right, okay, right. Part of that, pin this. Okay, do I take the pin out? Is it still good? All right, okay, fine. So I know now that the need for pinning is no longer there. It was there for a period, and now it's got better. But yeah, another thing that just mentioned is that so I do a lot on security and like doing RBAC models and ABAC models and persona-based security and stuff like that. It's the same thing. You've got to do it as well. He's like, okay, right.
Yeah.
It gets read. That's it. Read only. Okay. Or if it gets right, it gets right to this area where it can go and do its own stuff. Well, that's all it's got. But again, if you haven't got that nice design and functional thing of what you're trying to do, and then you're just iterating, all right, by the way, now I'll have that, do the updates. You may not do the things you don't want it to do, but it could go and do things you didn't want it to do, but you don't know. You can prevent that for sure if you know it hasn't got the right privileges. So it's guaranteed.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So yeah, so the next thing comment I have is now with the fact that a lot of those things you're talking about there, it's frameworks and that, but you've got help with that. What would your dream team be for that SDLC process? So to achieve a sprint now, okay, who would be in your sprint team now? What would that sprint team look like, and the roles they'd have in there, and what agents would they be controlling?
Interesting. So
we did no prep for this. You see, he's getting no questions that he knows. It's not as if I gave him a chance to think about.
No, I'm so curious. Are you looking for individuals' names, or are you looking for
not
not
at all. I think I'll give you an example. Before you'd have a Scrum Master, you'd have maybe
right. Got it. Roles. I was about to say, am I meant to be pinning people
No,
on LinkedIn?
it would be Dan and Kieran and me would be on the dream team.
Yeah. Yeah, but you won't let me poach Alex, so there you go.
No, keep away from him. How many people and what roles would they perform in there?
Well, if you're looking for, so I'm a big fan, and now I'm just going to go back to like the general software leadership. I don't think much has changed with this, and I'd say two pizza team always rings true, and it just comes down to very basic human ability to empathize and work closely with others. But some of the roles I think would have changed. I think in some ways a lot of the value we can get out of a good vibe coding experience, and we've talked about this more informally, is actually try and help your own experience. So if you've got a task to go and do, you can, before there's a very famous sort of XKCD matrix, which is how long does the task take you to automate versus how many times you do it. Well, with the ability of things like Cursor, Klein, Copilot, etc., that has just compressed that time down. So really you're looking for developers who are very interested in automating everything and improving everything, and then are very comfortable with AI tools in order to do that, such that when you ask them to do a laborious thing like check 500 documents or something, you're not finding someone who would traditionally sit down and start going through it meticulously, but instead it will be, great, how do I go and write a tool and bring the tool very quickly up to speed in order to do that? I think on the AI ops side, it's still been quite fleshed out, and I'm not quite sure on this, and I'm not quite sure how much it becomes a dedicated problem versus just some general skill set that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, for a while,
it's bridging that gap slightly because it's like a foot slightly in the data ops space, but then probably more on the DevOps piece because it's more application. Even though the lines get more blurred now, aren't they? Really.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's just it becomes that whenever there's something new or a new concept, you get specialization in it, and then we determine what is the general usual value of something, and every developer in the full stack developer idea. But every developer starts to have capability in this. Like most developers know a bit of Kubernetes or Docker,
Yeah,
or has to do some, open telemetry or something like that. So I'd expect most developers then to be able to have the understanding about which are good approaches to
yeah,
interact with models and what are the general safety measures. Generally, what I would probably, rather than having it trying to find an individual, I'd probably just get a developer, make it clear that's their responsibility to think within a team
yeah.
what's happening in the models. And actually, one thing I hadn't thought about, because we talked about pinning briefly, but the
Mm.
inverse then is releasing really the model we want to follow. And I'm sorry, very live. I've not
No, no, no.
put any
Yeah,
thought into this.
it's good.
But if we think about taking upgrades to applications, we don't just say, well, actually, we do sometimes. So a lot of like OSs and Office tools these days have just be live updates. But for business critical ones, you often go through an upgrade approach. So do you want to do something similar? So rather the default being a pin and an upgrade model, rather than default being live and pin if you hit an issue? Not quite sure. I'll need to think about this a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that comes into digital twins. The whole concept of digital twin at that point.
Yeah.
Basically, you've got those two things running at the same time. But you're betting on two horses, and you go, right, you're winning. Go flip across. In fact, I'm going to put the other horse, bet on the other one. Let's see if that one. Or as more and more horses, and you can actually like really change these things, maybe even real time. Like A/B testing.
Well, that comes down to like the consensus building approach. You have multiple different options in play, and if there's one which obvious starts to win regularly across multiple models and multiple prompts, that's probably clearly the answer that you need.
Yeah, exactly. Some things. Just made some notes there as well. We talked about the team size, and the term specialism came up, and I've seen lots of Scrum teams being put together, or teams scoping up to have teams, and the specialism thing always causes an issue, because you go and get, I need someone that's got that specialist skill. You either overcook it, where you get a whole dedicated person with specialist skill, but you don't actually have the need for them within that sprint to actually keep them fully loaded. You try and use them other ways, but they may not want to do that. But you're not getting your best bang for your buck from that specialist skill. Then after that, the other option, you share that person. It's always no Scrum Master who wants to share that person, because they want to be able to guaranteed resources. You get to some to the meeting, so you've got that whole, doesn't work well, but maybe you can do that, but you're still going to get some level of inefficiency from that approach.
Yep.
So what I'm thinking now is that the specialism now can come. There's still a need for those specialists, right? Those specialists aren't now needed within the sprint development ones day in, day out. They may be needed as a part of the end of sprint, or every 2 sprints they go and review the code, look at what's there, they go give some feedback on it, tell the people, then maybe let them know, use this template in the future. That problem's not going to come up again. But it becomes lighter touch on that, because the reason why you need them in before is to make sure you were never blocked, because as soon as you're blocked your team, and it's been scaled agile, you've got all these different trains, it just becomes a cluster, and and you get loads of wastage. So when we talk about that team of what it looked like, and I suppose it's not always too good. The junior roles now aren't as good now. Well, people aren't hiring juniors because we get the junior experience, but it's a shame, because who the hell is going to be taking things over after we go? Or maybe with the assumption that there'll be no need because that's all solved. I doubt it, but let's go. The other ones that are actually maybe worried about their jobs, but I think there's a role for them now. It's business people working in the business that maybe their things are being automated. They'd be great to come in with a bit of they'd like a bit of vibe coding or something like that, to them come in, help take those real requirements, like prototype stuff. They know the business language, they live in it, breathe in it for years and years. They may have an issue with their job security now because, they're going to automate. Move across. It's a good time to move across, and if there's an industry you've got specialism in, go and embed yourself in one of those development teams, because you'll add a lot of value. And I think that's you heard it here first. It's just created that.
But that's always been the case, right? Because if you think about if we think about the offshoring approach of the 2000s, 2010, which in many ways is very similar to what we're hitting now. There was a moval of specialized onshore resource to remote location, improved project management and business analysts on the near and onshore. And effectively, it's a similar approach, and I think it's affecting more people in a wider market. But I also think there's a little bit of wishful thinking here. I
Yeah.
think there is a truth in that it is harder. There is some ways less need for immediate junior developer roles. For many things that you would do with a junior dev, I will treat with AI in many ways. However, I think in the medium term, those jobs probably will still come back. As you said, that still is going to be a need for people to administrate this. I mean, I think when there's a lot of this hype, if we think back 2022, 2023, there was often new models released very regularly. But GPT 4.0 is coming up to like 18 months old, and that sort of hit the general scratch that itch capability. I mean, Claude 4 is, is better at coding, but it's not been this huge leaps
No,
forward. And
no.
so, and there's always been this for quite a while now, this rumor about GPT-5 is going to be this whole different world. Like, well, I don't know. I'm not so sure. And I think there's an intrinsic limit to what the LLM model can do, because we said that. Well, I said that humans think in some ways like an LLM, but we do many more than things than think, and we think as ways with sound, with vision, which fundamentally, if we come down to it, an LLM just predicts what the next token, which references a small bit of text, needs to the next thing out. There is a total constraint to what it can do.
Yeah.
So I think there will be still need for junior developers. My concern actually in the medium term, that junior developers primarily be very effective at AI coding and like vibe coding, but won't be incentivized to understand why. And we have this weird effect where short-term productivity gains actually remove productivity over the medium to long term. So I can be a very effective vibe coder because when I see that the AI has got itself in the knot, I know how to jump in and fix it. But that's based off 20 years of experience. Whereas if someone's got 2 weeks of experience,
you can't be coding 20 years. You're not that old now.
yeah, I'm a bit older than luck.
Me too.
25, mate, right?
Yeah, a long paper round. That's what I had.
Yeah.
So, no, I made two things there. First one was the offshore model. So it was bought into massively for a long time. We still and have pitched against, and there's large projects. They still go that route, and they filter on it's the sort order, and the lesser quality. It's all about the numbers. And I think that market now is the fact that because the speed that you can get a team working on with that assistance and co-located, same time zone, maybe even going in office meetings as well, a bit radical. I think the associated risk and maybe the difference between the cost between the two now, the fact that you can get more done, maybe with slightly high price resources, but more predictable. I don't think the cost difference is going to be there now to justify offshoring stuff.
Yeah, well, in many ways, technology has been the success story of globalization, and you've seen depression of wages in some areas with increase elsewhere, and it's become a much more level playing field. But we're now properly off the topic of AI onto
true.
leadership and management. We're very interested in that as well.
I
don't think it's an obvious choice.
Yeah, it's another one that's back on topic. Okay, and it's a reality check on the cost. All right, so the subscription service, and anyone goes and uses Gemini, they get a number of free goes, or they pay £15 a month. You go and get ChatGPT, and they probably hit the limit on it, and they bang away asking it questions all the time. They're not making money on that, and I think it's a lost lead for them. And so now's the good time to learn it, right? Because it's going to be learning's coming cheaper. At some point, you know, for example, Gemini owned by Google. Google must be losing masses of revenue from advertising that's no longer happening now, because I'm no longer Googling up to find answers for stuff. I'm going straight to go and get, either one or two sources, either Perplexity, Gemini, or ChatGPT, depending on what I'm looking for. Then they're getting no advertising revenue from that, and I know all those subscriptions. One of them is free with my one of my banking things, so I don't think they're making money from, or when I'm using that.
Yeah.
And I know that me and my team are hitting the Teams GPT much more. If I was to work out how many things we've done, in fact, I might ask it later. How much electricity and water have you used over the past week with all of my prompts and chats? And how much is my subscription?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, one of the things I've had with people have been worried about AI for a little while, and there's an argument of the human brain is massively efficient, so it consumes 30 watts of power, whereas a query GPT, I believe when I last looked, is about 1.5 kilowatts, about the same as running a kettle, right? And so if we go from the pure electricity benefit point of view, that humans are actually quite efficient, but the only difference is that humans require a lot of other power and resources to keep alive, and we only work for about 4 hours a day. Yeah. So if we wanted to argue for the nightmarish Matrix solution where we're all brains in jars, I think we would be okay. But I'm not going to pump for that future, by the way.
No. But I think there's the business model for all these large companies is going to change. There is a I think it's a period of cheap.
That is a real problem.
Yeah.
So much of the internet is based off the attention economy and the idea that you get value out of effectively retaining people's eyeballs, their ears, whatever, to get that in such that you can sell them a product. Fundamentally, that's through advertising.
Yeah.
But as we try to remove human attention and replace it with AI attention, where's that money stream coming from now? Where do you get it back? And like you said, that there's no way that OpenAI is basing its future on $20 a month subscription. No. And when one of the interesting things, so some of the other, so AI coding, you mentioned the cursor, but other ones, when you get a direct link into an API endpoint for one of these models, it really and exponentially goes up the cost as particularly the context window increases. And you could really imagine futures with teams trying to figure out how much are they wanting to spend on human headcount versus possibly token usage or so. And I think what we might see also is kind of an Uber moment, because if we think back 2013, 14, Uber's barging its way into the big cities, and it was fantastically cheap. I remember I was working Canary Wharf at the time, and it was almost cheaper for me to get an Uber home than train at one point.
Yeah, going around nuts the whole time.
Yeah, and effectively it was burning through VC capital, right?
Yeah.
And we're in the stage now where these AI companies are trying to do that, going through the same approach. But then, as I don't really get an Uber anymore, and most of the time if I need to hop between two places in London, I will go back to a black cab, because there's not much price difference now, because you're now hitting, that's the actual cost of running that service.
I enjoy my conversations as well. It's a good chat.
It always is, yeah. But I think we could hit a similar point that once AI's burnt through that money and has started to charge at a real level, and when we try and do complex tasks, the number of tokens required goes up exponentially. Yep. Humans actually start to look reasonable again.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Is the fact that if you're making decisions based on what you think it's costing now, you should really have a look. Okay, well, what would that be in the real world if these things weren't capped at pay-as-you-go price or something like that? And that opens up a whole new market of being able to move across, agent agnostic, a layer there that'll point you at the best one, spot instances of getting you cheaper prices using these ones at this one, whole token management piece, that's going to be a big.
It's a good point, actually. I've not thought about the spot instance, because a lot of the work I'm doing is in sort of batch processing and using AI. That there could be then a model in the future of, you mentioned FinOps, scheduling to even out load to hit the correct use cases, not worthwhile for live cases.
Yeah, well, and I think that's going to bring the on-premise thing back, because trained model doesn't need to be out there, right? So it's a fixed price now. Just go and get yourself like a nice, under your desk. It doesn't matter. Well, maybe not, but putting it in somewhere, maybe a data center, you're renting a little bit of space and it sits there, but it's yours. You're just paying for a little bit of rack space or whatever. That's for training. You don't need to do that stuff and pay for that stuff there, but you need to invest in that, and that's obviously gonna, you got to be on the list to get the GPUs now, haven't you? So you need to be Vincent's mate to go and get your NVIDIA.
It's not as bad as it was in like 21 when there was a big crypto boom, but it is still pretty bad.
Yeah. So the other thing I heard the other day, and this is probably it was, but I'm linking it to AI. So when companies coming in and they're making decisions of either mass firing, mass redundancies, or anything, just to go and you see at the moment large PE companies coming in, asset strip or whatever call it, come in and make it look really even more profitable, but probably not the most ethical sort of thing. So imagine you go in there and say, right, okay, so the decision to replace your call center with an AI agent. Okay. So the factor that you'd put into that before you make that decision is, what is the risk of my customers leaving me? That is versus the cost of having that call center. Right. So if my erosion is going to be X amount or whatever, but the cost of that, but I know that's going to affect my share price, or the multipliers of the revenue that one by this. Bang, you might start losing people year 2, maybe year 3, maybe. But it's the risk factor of doing it. It's is it worth doing now? I think that's
one of the most interesting things that we've not hit really inside to, and I'm surprised at, is the legal side of AI and who owns that decision when an AI makes it. And so we get, if you're replacing your call center, so effectively a lot of these call centers are, they're through some other third party which has some level of insurance, and you have an individual, if they make something wrong, they know their bounds it can be in. You fire them, so you have different level of insurance. We haven't had any cases yet of like an AI has said something and the company who has run the AI has to own that decision.
So it's it's the same thing like the autonomous cars as well. So I think they got the one of the first ones that. So so when we get to the point where decisions are being made that affects humans, which a human would be accountable for if it was done by a human, and there's a legal framework for that, it's where the accountability lies. I'm sure some AI lawyers are working on this now, just to protect themselves or something. They've realised that.
Yeah, you can't put an AI in prison and you can't charge it money because it doesn't have any assets. So it's what do you just do? Change its weighting and call it bad?
So and it's slightly off topic again, but the AI it never tells you you're stupid. It never gives you a reality check, which is a real problem because being told you're wrong is an experience that we all have to learn from, and maybe sometimes how we're told can be a different way. But if you don't have that feedback loop when that wasn't a very good idea, or it is a problem. And I'll give you one example. I think of a guy that thought he'd invented time travel. He wrote a amateur sort of scientific white paper on this, submitted just for refinement. Put the refinement, said, "Wow, great work! That's brilliant. You've invented time travel." Anyway, it got to the point where he actually thought he had invented time travel, and unfortunately, that sent him crazy. So, there's a I think there's a whole lot of ethics. Yes, it's going to get funky.
Real social problem coming up here with people who are only interacting with the AIs, who are being told, and they are trained. And that's like coming back to one of the first points we're going through, like how much can you trust it? Well, if someone thinks they're always going to say yes to you, you can't trust it at all.
No.
And effectively, that's what they've been, and that's a large point where we get hallucinations, because it's always trying to give you an answer.
Just trying to please you. Don't please me. Tell me I'm wrong. Don't make stuff up. I've had enough. These are the arguments I have nowadays, actually, like vocally. So to your point earlier, I mean, we had this COVID era, which the next generation have had to deal with that. And for me, well, it was fine for me. I just travelled around, got stuck places, worked online, focused on work. That was great, now I have to go into offices. It's not as good. But for others, it was a very, very significant negative impact on their learning or career path or social skills or children growing up. Now we've got the next iteration of just having conversations with generative AI and thinking there's only one answer to every question.
Yes, well, and you have the answer to it, or trusting AI that it is always right. And it is a real concern. And I think there's a real thing that in society we believe that technology will come up with solutions to most problems. And there is, so despite the fact being quite involved in the AI field, I'm quite an AI cynic. I'm not sure that this is good overall for society, and that I think we need the human side, and we need, particularly in your point, the feedback. It's very hard these days to actually get real good, useful, constructive, negative feedback, and we've sort of lost it as a general approach, and it's a real shame.
And I will say this: I spend a lot of time between America and UK. In America, it's very hard to get that honest feedback as well, because they're a bit to, you can do that, Where in England, down at our meetup, they would say, that's stupid. What are you doing? What a stupid idea. And then there's maybe how you deliver it as well, but it's good. But honest feedback is essential, and we can't even rely on AI for honest feedback.
We could train a model. Maybe that's the next one. We actually, I did a while ago flip my GPT settings to be sarcastic Gen Z, and I couldn't understand a word it was saying. But so maybe we can do more of a trained model to go and.
I hadn't found that bit of fun. I might change my.
I'll show you the prompting afterwards, mate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've got mine. I've got mine answering. This is Agent Tab 008 at the moment, but that was just a bit of fun. So any kicks I get nowadays. Look, I'm just checking. There's been some comments, but Ramona, thanks for tuning in. Aviz, thanks for tuning in as well, and anyone else that was there as well. I will look through all the comments later. I wasn't able to multitask, but for those that may want to catch up with you, discuss a bit more on this thing, or what you do in the business, how will they find you or get hold of you, Alex?
Best way would be LinkedIn. We should make sure there's a post there with an @ to me at some point. I've been on some other ones in LAT, but find me on LinkedIn, ping me a message. Very happy to talk. I mean, very interested, very passionate about this field, so always happy.
You are indeed. I always enjoy our conversations, and as they
normally, likewise.
Yeah, the meetup. So if you want to catch up with both me and Alex at the same time, the meetup end of the last Wednesday of the full week of the month at the Q Bar, Tabernacle Street in London. So,
are we doing one in August? We didn't last year.
I didn't, but now I'm here. We can. We maybe do a summer party. We'll do something, I'm sure. Anyway.
Cool. Well, looking forward to that.
So I'm trying to think who's on the show next week. I don't know. I think I've got someone on the show next week. And I do have a big announcement soon as well, which will be someone coming on the show, which is we have a new department, which I mentioned earlier on the show, for our data and AI. So we've got someone starting to head up that. So all will be revealed soon.
Very exciting.
It is very exciting. You already know who it is anyway. So all right.
I'll preserve the mystery.
Well, thank you, everyone. Tune in hopefully next week for some more fun. Alex, thank you very much for your time, and as I say, it's been a great conversation. I'm gonna have a follow up on a few things with you now. But
sounds good. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh.